At the family dinner, parents said, "Your sister deserves everything." Then gave her $200K I earned. I was 31 when I learned that 7 years of sacrifice meant absolutely nothing to my family. I walked into my parents' house 15 minutes late that Sunday, gripping a bottle of Merlot like it could somehow make up for the week I'd just survived at work. The driveway was packed. Mom's sedan, Dad's pickup, and that shiny Volkswagen I'd co-signed for when Corinne's car died on the interstate. I had to park on the street. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked exhausted, hollowed out by 7 straight days of fixing someone else's numbers at the office, while my own life quietly fell apart. The smell of pot roast hit me the second I opened the door. Sunday dinners at the Price House were a ritual, predictable as clockwork. Dad would complain about property taxes. Mom would ask about my non-existent dating life. Corinne would talk about her latest app idea like it was going to change the world. I'd gotten used to the script. Mom came rushing over, wiping flour from her hands onto her apron, kissing my cheek with that perfunctory affection that said, "You're here, good. Now we can start." I handed her the wine and started to explain why I was late. Something about quarterly reports and bad data from marketing. But she waved me off. "Save the boring office talk, honey. Corinne's got exciting news about her app." Of course she did. Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "Jeanette, you hear about that new development downtown? Property values are tanking." That was his version of a greeting. I kissed the top of his head anyway, noticing how his hair was thinning in the same pattern mine probably would someday. Then I saw the dining room table. The good china, the fancy placemats, the kind of setup Mom only did for holidays. A Sunday dinner with the good dishes meant something was happening, and my stomach twisted before I even knew why. Corinne bounced in from the living room, phone glued to her hand, eyes bright with that manic energy she always had when she thought success was right around the corner. She hugged me with one arm, already distracted by whatever notification was lighting up her screen. "Jeanette, you won't believe what's happening with the app. The investors are—" "Dinner's ready," Mom cut her off, carrying the pot roast like she was presenting the crown jewels. We sat down in our usual spots. Dad at the head, Mom at the foot. Corinne and I across from each other, the way we'd sat for 30 years. The familiarity of it should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like walking into a trap I couldn't see yet. Dad asked about work. Before I could answer, Corinne's phone buzzed so loud it rattled against her leg. She yanked it out, gasped, muttered something about Trevor from the incubator, and disappeared before anyone could stop her. Mom just beamed after her. "That girl is going places." I took a long drink of wine and tried again. "The quarterly reports look solid. We're up 12%, which means—" The sharp ting of a spoon against glass cut me off. Dad was standing, his face unusually serious, and my chest tightened. Corinne slid back into her seat just as he started talking. "Since we're all here," he said, voice heavy in a way I'd never heard before, "your mother and I have an announcement." The air in the room changed. I set my fork down slowly. "We've decided to sell the house." The words hung there, suspended, like they didn't quite make sense yet. I blinked. The house I grew up in. The house with the crooked mailbox Dad and I fixed when I was 9. The house with the foundation I paid $14,000 to repair after the flood. "But why?" I asked. My voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "I thought you were staying here through retirement." Mom reached for Dad's hand. We were, but plans change. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. And we've decided to give all the equity to Corinne. My wine glass froze halfway to my mouth. The room tilted. All of it? I barely recognized my own voice. Dad nodded, looking at Corinne with this proud, indulgent expression. It's about $200,000 after the mortgage. She's in final negotiations with a venture capital firm. This will get her across the finish line. My brain started flipping through numbers like a Rolodex I couldn't stop. Mom's emergency surgery, $11,000. The foundation, $14,000. Dad's truck transmission, Corinne's coding boot camps, $25,000 at least. 7 years of checks I'd written because someone in this family always had an emergency. What about me? The wine glass slipped from my hand. It shattered against the hardwood floor, red liquid splashing across my shoes like blood. None of us moved. I've put everything into this family, I said, my voice steadier than it should have been. I turned down a job in Denver. $30,000 more a year. Because you said you needed me here. Mom's face softened in that condescending way it always did when I questioned anything. Oh, honey, you're established. Corinne needs the chance you've already had. I laughed. It came out sharp and ugly. Established? I renewed my apartment lease last month. Again. Because every time I save enough for a down payment, someone in this family has a crisis. Dad's jaw tightened. Your sister deserves this opportunity, Jeanette. This app could be worth millions. I looked at Corinne, waiting for her to say something. An acknowledgement, a flicker of guilt, anything. She looked away, fingers already back on her phone screen. I need some air. I pushed back from the table. Glass crunched under my shoes. Mom called after me. Something about the pot roast getting cold, but I was already out the door. The porch was cold. My hands shook as I texted Marnie, my best friend, the only person who'd heard every chapter of this nightmare. Can we talk tomorrow? It's important. Her reply came instantly. Coffee shop by your office? 8 a.m.? Yes, thank you. Through the window, I could see them continuing dinner without me. Dad gesturing, Corinne nodding, Mom serving seconds. The perfect family, minus the daughter who kept pointing out that none of this was actually fair. I stood there in the dark, watching them. And something inside me finally cracked open. Not rage, clarity. The next morning, Marnie was already at our corner table when I walked in. She looked up from her phone, her expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. I ordered your usual, she said, sliding a latte toward me. You look like you didn't sleep. I didn't. She leaned forward, glancing around like she was about to confess to a crime. Listen, before you tell me about dinner, there's something I need to tell you. Something I saw at work. Marnie worked at Grand Rapids Community Credit Union. She handled financial documents all day. If she was breaking protocol to tell me something, it was bad. There's a new HELOC lien against your parents' house, she whispered. $70,000. Filed 3 weeks ago. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. They just told me yesterday they're selling to give Corinne $200,000. That's what made me look twice. Marnie's fingers tapped nervously against her cup. The signatures looked off. I've seen your dad's signature on documents before. This wasn't it. The implications crashed over me like freezing water. a home equity line of credit, $70,000, forged signatures, and a sudden decision to sell the house. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. I need to go. That night, I logged into the family financial accounts. 7 years ago, when Mom needed emergency surgery and Dad was out of work, they'd added me just in case. Like everything else, it had become permanent. Another responsibility I carried without questioning it. I pulled up Dad's credit report. There it was. Midwest Financial, $70,000. Opened 22 days ago. Fully drawn. My hands were shaking as I requested the loan documents through my financial advisor. The PDFs arrived just before midnight. I printed everything, spreading the pages across my dining table under the harsh light of my desk lamp. The forgeries were laughably obvious. Dad's signature was missing the characteristic underscore he'd done since I was a kid. Mom's signature had these exaggerated loops. Too rounded, too feminine. Like someone trying to mimic what a woman's handwriting should look like. I knew that handwriting. I'd seen it on birthday cards, on loan applications for her last 3 failed startups. Corinne. My sister had committed bank fraud, a felony, prison time. The printer hummed back to life as I started pulling records. 7 years of financial statements. The $11,000 for Mom's surgery. The $25,000 for Corinne's coding dreams. The $14,000 foundation repair. All with my signature, all from my accounts. All expected, never appreciated. I created a new folder on my desktop, labeled it Family Meeting. Started scanning and saving every document, every signature comparison, every transaction that proved what I'd been to them. A resource to be tapped, not a person to be valued. At 2 a.m, I texted Marnie. "You okay?" she asked. "No, but I will be. Can you testify about the signatures if needed?" The 3 dots pulsed for almost a minute. Professionally, I shouldn't have told you anything. But as your friend? Absolutely. The next day at work, I stared blankly at my computer screen until my colleague Steve noticed. "Rough weekend?" he asked, setting coffee on my desk. "You could say that." At lunch, I called my college roommate in Denver. "That position still open?" I asked, without preamble. "Jeanette, yeah, they're still looking. You finally ready to get out of there?" I didn't answer directly, just asked her to keep me posted. That evening, my financial advisor confirmed what I already knew. "These signatures aren't legitimate," he said over the phone. "If you're asking professionally, I'd advise the account holder to report this immediately." "And if I'm asking as a friend?" He paused. "Then I'd say whoever did this is counting on family loyalty to avoid consequences." I sat alone in my apartment, evidence spread across every surface. 7 years of statements. Thousands of dollars flowing in one direction, from me to them. I picked up my phone, pulled up the bank's fraud department number. 1 call. That was all it would take. But families deserved one chance to make things right. Even families like mine. I texted all of them. "Emergency family meeting, tomorrow night. 7 p.m., non-negotiable." They were already seated when I arrived the next evening. Same dining room table where everything had shattered 2 days before. Dad looked irritated. Mom looked worried. Corinne was scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging me. I placed my folder on the table, opened it slowly, arranged the documents in neat rows. Credit reports, loan documents, signature comparisons. the $70,000 HELOC paperwork with her handwriting all over it. "Corinne," I said, my voice calm despite the hammering in my chest. "Explain this." Her phone clattered to the floor. Mom leaned forward, confusion spreading across her face. "Corinne, what is the 70,000? This isn't the app money." Corinne's eyes darted between them and the door, looking for an escape that didn't exist. Dad picked up the loan document. His face went pale as understanding hit him. "It's not what it looks like," Corinne started, her voice barely a whisper. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said. "Bank fraud, forgery, a felony." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Corinne crumbled, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I needed it for the app. The investors were backing out. I just needed bridge funding. Just temporary." "Bridge funding you stole," I said. Dad moved from shock to panic in seconds, his eyes meeting Mom's in that silent communication they'd perfected over decades. Then both turned to me with a look I recognized instantly. The same look they'd given me when Mom needed surgery money, when the foundation cracked, when Corinne's last venture collapsed. "This is bank fraud," I repeated, standing. "I'm calling the bank." Dad moved faster than I'd seen in years, positioning himself between me and the door. "You will not send your sister to prison." "Arthur," Mom whispered. "We are a family," he said, his voice rising. "We fix this. You will not call anyone. We forbid you." I looked at them. Really looked at them. Dad, blocking my exit like I was the criminal. Mom, already calculating damage control. Corinne, crying now that she was caught. "I will not pay for her crime," I said, walking past him toward the door. "And I won't be part of your cover-up." The next morning, Corinne's Facebook post appeared at 6:42, just as I was pouring coffee. A tearful selfie, mascara artfully smudged. 3 paragraphs about how I was jealous, bitter, sabotaging her dreams because I couldn't handle her success. "My heart is breaking today," she wrote. "When family betrays you, it cuts deeper than any wound." Within minutes, comments flooded in. Cousin Rebecca, Uncle Frank, Aunt Susan, all of them telling me what a terrible person I was. I silenced my phone and went to work. At lunch, I created a new folder, family documentation, started organizing everything methodically, social media attacks, timeline of fraud, threatening messages, financial history spanning 7 years. When my mother's 3rd voicemail came that evening, "Jeanette, please, you're tearing this family apart." I saved it, categorized it, and ate my dinner in silence. The strange calm I felt was almost supernatural. My hands should have been shaking. Instead, I felt steady, grounded. 3 days later, my father's pickup truck pulled into my office parking lot just as I was leaving. They intercepted me before I reached my car, Mom looking smaller than usual, Dad looming larger. "We need to talk," he said. "This mess on social media. You need to control it." "I haven't posted anything," I replied. Mom stepped forward. "Corinne is scared. You need to go online and say this was all a family misunderstanding. Tell everyone you support your sister." The request was so absurd, I almost laughed. "You want me to lie for her?" "It's to protect the family," Mom pleaded. "I will not lie to cover up her fraud." Dad stepped closer, blocking the setting sun. "If you don't stop this investigation and fix the public damage, you're no longer our daughter." I glanced up at the security camera above the employee entrance. its red light blinking steadily. "I've been no longer your daughter since the moment you decided to give Corinne everything while expecting me to pay for it," I said, stepping around them. "Good night." That evening, the messages of support started arriving. Quiet counterpoints to the family onslaught. Marnie offering her spare room. My college roommate confirming the Denver position was still open. A law school friend offering pro bono document review. When the bank's formal inquiry arrived by certified mail 3 days later, I stared at the envelope for 5 full minutes before opening it. They requested a written statement regarding potentially fraudulent signatures on the HELOC. I drafted my response that night. My hand hovered over the send button for only a moment before I clicked. The bank opened an official fraud investigation within 48 hours. My father's panicked midnight call came through slurred and desperate. "What have you done?" "They're saying there's an investigation. Do you know what this means?" I documented the call and hung up when Corinne showed up at my apartment the next evening, uninvited. Her eyes were genuinely red for once. "Please, Jeanette, I'll lose everything." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time in years. The expensive highlights, the designer purse she couldn't afford, the entitled expectation in her eyes that someone would always fix her mistakes. "You chose this when you forged their signatures," I said quietly, and closed the door. The next morning, I filed a formal police report, made certified copies of all evidence, emailed my landlord about not renewing my lease, called Denver and scheduled an interview. My financial planner helped me separate all remaining family accounts, his eyes widening at each entanglement we unraveled. "It's like financial quicksand," he muttered. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm leaving Grand Rapids behind." The text came as I was packing books. Annual neighborhood BBQ this Saturday. Hosted by Arthur and Brenda Price. 4 p.m. I stared at the group message, finger hovering over the screen. Accept or decline. One last family appearance. I pressed accept. When I arrived, parking 3 houses down, the neighborhood gathering looked exactly like every year before. Mrs. Winslow waving from the drinks table, the Andersons chatting near the grill, Dad flipping burgers with practiced precision, Mom arranging platters, Corinne holding court with her usual audience. The perfect American family. The illusion almost hurt more than the reality. Dad noticed me first. His spatula froze mid-flip. For an hour, I weaved through conversations, sidestepping their careful narrative. No, I wasn't struggling professionally. Yes, Denver was exciting. No, Corinne and I weren't competitive. We simply had different values. Dad watched me like a hawk. Mom hovered, intercepting conversations. Corinne checked her phone obsessively, coordinating their defense in real time. Then Dad approached me directly by the dessert table, positioning himself between me and the other guests. "You're embarrassing the family," he hissed. I set down my plate carefully. "Am I embarrassing you, Dad?" People nearby paused, sensing conflict. "Or," I continued, my voice steady but loud enough to carry, "did Corinne embarrass you when she forged your signatures on a $70,000 fraudulent mortgage loan?" The words landed like stones in still water. Silence rippled outward. Conversations halted. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. Dad's face drained of color. Mom froze. Pitcher of iced tea suspended mid-pour. Corinne's mouth opened and closed without sound. Mr. Jacobson, The bank manager, who'd been our neighbor for 20 years, stepped forward. "Arthur, is that true? Forged signatures?" Dad's eyes darted around, seeking escape. "George, this is complicated. A misunderstanding. $70,000 in fraud isn't simple or a misunderstanding," Mr. Jacobson said, the banker in him overtaking the neighbor. "It's a felony." I didn't stay to watch the implosion. I'd placed the truth in the light. That was all I needed to do. As I walked to my car, my phone started buzzing. Mrs. Winslow, Mr. Anderson, even Mr. Jacobson asking me to call Monday. I could have explained further, ensured their complete destruction. Instead, I sent one response to everyone. "This is now a legal matter. I can't discuss it further." In my rearview mirror, I caught one last glimpse. Dad gesturing frantically, Mom covering her face, Corinne running toward the house. The picture-perfect family shattered beyond repair. Not by me, by their own choices. On Monday, I sat on Aunt Elaine's floral couch, surrounded by concerned family faces arranged in a perfect intervention semicircle. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. "Jeanette, we're here because we love you and your family. Your family, not our family." Dad's lawyer, a balding man with expensive cufflinks, slid paperwork across the coffee table. "A simple family settlement. You cover the HELOC temporarily." "Temporarily," I interrupted. "Yes. Once Corinne's venture capital funding comes through, she'll repay every penny." Just like her last 3 apps, my sister was nothing if not consistently delusional. "We need you to withdraw your statements to the bank," Dad said, his voice hardening. "Stop cooperating with their investigation." Mom reached for my hand. I pulled away. "Do you understand what you're doing?" Uncle Robert asked. "This could destroy Corinne's future over one mistake." "One $70,000 mistake." Mom dabbed at her eyes. "My blood pressure is through the roof. The doctor says the stress." Dad opened a photo album, pointing to an 8-year-old me with missing front teeth, standing next to a newly planted maple tree. "This is our home, your home." "No," I said. "It stopped being my home the moment you decided to give everything to Corinne while expecting me to foot the bill." Corinne's boyfriend, Derek, someone I'd met twice, leaned forward. "Some people might think you're just jealous of your sister's success." I reached for my phone, opening the email I'd been waiting for all morning. "The Denver position is still open," I said, my voice steady. "I accepted it. $30,000 raise. I've signed a lease, and I've reserved a U-Haul for next weekend." I showed them the confirmation. "One way." The room went silent. "I've emailed your office," I told the lawyer, "declining your settlement. Check your inbox." "Jeanette," Mom pleaded, "think about what you're doing." "I have thought about it for 7 years." I stood, adjusting my purse. The truth matters more than comfortable lies. I walked out, feeling their stares burn into my back. 3 days later, everything collapsed. The HELOC fraud triggered automatic default on the mortgage. The house sale fell through. Mom and Dad filed for bankruptcy. Corinne got sued independently. It turned out her promising app had exactly 0 investors. The fancy meetings were coffee dates with friends. 7 years of financial manipulation exposed in 7 days. Saturday morning, I closed the back of the U-Haul, securing the last of my possessions. Everything I owned fit inside this metal box. It felt lighter than I expected. The house I grew up in was visible in the rearview mirror. The crooked mailbox, the maple tree, the window of my childhood bedroom. It all grew smaller as I pulled away. My phone stayed silent. No desperate calls, no guilt-laden texts. They'd finally accepted I was beyond their reach. "Proceed to Denver, Colorado," the GPS announced. Each mile marker put more distance between me and Grand Rapids, between the person I was and the person I was becoming. Somewhere near the state line, the weight I'd carried for years lifted. My shoulders relaxed. My breathing deepened. "I'm finally free," I whispered. 6 months later, I stood on my Denver balcony, watching the sun paint the Rocky Mountains gold. My coffee was hot, my view was breathtaking, and my phone pinged with an email. "Performance bonus approved. $5,000. After just 6 months. I'd already earmarked it for my retirement account, something I'd never had the luxury to consider before. Inside, my workspace sat by floor-to-ceiling windows, dual monitors, ergonomic chair, a thriving succulent. No more hunching over a kitchen table surrounded by someone else's bills. My bookshelf held photos of my new life. Weekend hikes, company dinners, Marnie's visit last month, her eyes wide with surprise. "You walk differently," she'd said. "Like the weight of the world isn't on your shoulders anymore." When Aunt Susan called that morning, I answered calmly. "Your parents received a 1099-C from the IRS. They owe $25,000 in taxes on the discharged debt. Your father would never ask, but—" "I'm no longer available for that," I said, my voice calm but firm. After we hung up, I sat with the feeling. No crushing guilt, no desperate calculations, just quiet certainty. My therapist called it progress. "You've identified the role you played, the rescuer, the safety net. Now you're writing a new story." In Grand Rapids, therapy would have seemed selfish. Here, it was essential maintenance. I'd learned that boundaries weren't walls. They were healthy definitions of where I ended and others began. Tonight, I'd celebrate my promotion with colleagues. Tomorrow, I'd volunteer at the financial literacy workshop, helping a young woman whose family treated her paycheck as communal property. "You can say no without explaining why," I'd told her last time. No is a complete sentence. My phone pinged. An email about my parents' house being sold at auction. I felt a brief pang, childhood memories flickering through my mind, but no regret. In my journal this morning, I'd written, "Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival." Marnie called with her weekly Grand Rapids gossip update. I listened, laughing genuinely, watching the sun climb higher over the mountains. "That's not my world anymore," I said. As we chatted, coffee warm in my hand, I realized something had changed. The smile on my face wasn't relief from solving someone else's crisis. It was peace. Sustained, quiet peace from being responsible only for my own life. I'd spent 31 years learning that family loyalty without boundaries isn't love. It's exploitation. And the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.